Deep underground, more than 1,000 feet below the earth, behind a sealed vault in a German salt mine, American soldiers found something staggering. Piled in the darkness, sack upon sack, row upon row, was a fortune almost beyond imagining, the hidden treasure of a crumbling empire. Hundreds of tons of gold, priceless masterpieces of art, taken from the great museums of Europe, bundles of currency, chests of silver, riches heaped in the underground chambers of the mine. It was one of the greatest treasure discoveries in history, a hoard of wealth concealed by a regime desperate to hide it from the advancing Allies. But among the glittering gold and the priceless art was something far darker, something that revealed the true and terrible nature of the regime that had gathered it. This is the true story of what General Patton's army found hidden in a Nazi salt mine. This is a story about a staggering discovery, about the hidden treasure of a collapsing regime uncovered in the final days of the war. It is a story about wealth and its dark origins, about the way that the glittering hoard revealed the terrible truth of the regime that had amassed it. And it is a story grounded in the documented historical record, one of the most remarkable discoveries of the entire war, thoroughly documented in the historical archives. A reference is provided in the description so you can verify these facts for yourself. To understand this discovery, you have to understand the circumstances that led the regime to hide its treasure in a salt mine deep underground. By the final months of the war, Germany was collapsing, its cities under relentless bombing, its armies pushed back on every front, its defeat drawing near. The capital and the great national bank at its heart were being pounded by Allied bombing, and the regime feared for the safety of its treasure, the vast wealth it had accumulated, including its gold reserves. To protect this treasure from the bombing and from the advancing Allies, the regime decided to move it out of the capital and hide it away in a safer location, deep underground, where it might be concealed and protected until it could be recovered. The location chosen for this hidden treasure was a salt mine, deep beneath the earth in the heart of Germany. Salt mines offered ideal conditions for concealing and protecting valuables deep underground, hidden from bombing and from prying eyes. The regime moved a vast quantity of treasure to this mine, transporting it from the capital and storing it in the underground chambers far below the surface. Into the mine went the gold reserves of the National Bank, a hoard of immense value, along with quantities of currency and other valuables. And into the mine also went a great treasure of art, masterpieces taken from the museums, spirited away and hidden underground for safekeeping as the regime's world collapsed around it. But the regime's effort to hide its treasure was overtaken by the speed of the Allied advance. As the treasure was being concealed in the mine, the Allied armies were driving into the heart of Germany, and among them was the army commanded by the American general whose forces would make the discovery. His army crossed a great river and drove deep into Germany, advancing rapidly through the collapsing country. And as it advanced, it approached the region where the treasure lay hidden, drawing ever closer to the salt mine and its concealed hoard. The regime had hoped to hide its treasure safely away, but the rapid advance of the Allied forces was bringing them close to the very place where it was concealed. Now, this account is grounded in the documented historical record, one of the most remarkable discoveries of the war. What follows is drawn from that record. The core is thoroughly documented. American forces of General Patton's Third Army did indeed discover a vast treasure hidden in a salt mine, including hundreds of tons of gold, quantities of currency, priceless artworks, and loot taken by the regime, one of the greatest treasure discoveries of the war. The details are recounted to convey the magnitude of the find and the dark truth it revealed. The discovery of the treasure came about through a chance encounter, a piece of information that led the Americans to the hidden hoard. As the American forces occupied the area around the mine, they came into contact with local people, including some who had been brought to Germany as forced laborers. From these people, the Americans learned of the treasure hidden in the mine, of the gold and valuables that had been brought there and concealed underground. This information, passed on in a chance encounter, alerted the Americans to the presence of the hidden hoard, and they moved to investigate to discover whether the reports of hidden treasure were true. What they would find would exceed anything they might have expected. The Americans investigated the mine, descending into its depths to search for the reported treasure. Deep underground, they found a vault, a sealed chamber where the treasure was concealed. The vault was locked, its entrance sealed, and the key could not be found. Determined to reach the treasure within, the Americans took the decision to break into the vault, blasting through the wall to gain access to the sealed chamber. And when they broke through and entered the vault, they found themselves confronted with an astonishing sight: a treasure of staggering magnitude heaped in the underground chamber. The reports had been true, and more than true. The vault held a fortune almost beyond imagining. What the Americans found in the vault was a hoard of gold of enormous magnitude. Piled in the chamber were thousands of bags of gold, gold bars and gold coins, sealed and arranged in rows, a treasure weighing hundreds of tons. This was the bulk of the National Gold Reserve, the great store of gold that the regime had accumulated, now hidden away in the depths of the mine. The sheer quantity of it was staggering. A vast fortune in gold heaped in the underground chamber. Along with the gold were quantities of currency, both national and foreign, and other valuables, a treasure of immense value concealed in the vault. It was one of the greatest hoards of wealth ever discovered, a fortune of staggering proportions hidden deep beneath the earth. But the gold was not the only treasure the mine contained. The mine also held a great treasure of art, masterpieces taken from the museums and hidden underground. Among the artworks were paintings by some of the most celebrated artists in history, priceless masterpieces of immense cultural value. Hundreds of works of art were found in the mine, some carefully crated, others simply lying loose in the underground chambers. This was a treasure of a different kind, a hoard of priceless cultural heritage, the artistic patrimony of Europe, taken and hidden away by the regime. The discovery of this art, alongside the gold, made the find all the more extraordinary, a treasure of both immense monetary and immense cultural value. The magnitude of the discovery drew the attention of the highest levels of the Allied command, and the top generals themselves came to see the treasure. The Allied commander, along with the general whose army had made the discovery and another senior general, descended into the mine to inspect the hoard with their own eyes. Deep underground, in the chambers of the mine, they viewed the vast treasure, the gold and the currency and the art, the staggering wealth that the regime had hidden away. It was a remarkable moment. The top Allied commanders gathered in the depths of a salt mine to behold one of the greatest treasure discoveries in history, the hidden hoard of the collapsing regime. There is a memorable detail from the general's descent into the mine that captures the character of the men and the moment. As they descended in the mine's elevator, deep down the dark shaft, one of the generals, known for his colorful personality, made a joke about the danger of the descent, quipping that if the single cable holding the elevator were to snap, promotions in the army would be considerably stimulated. The Allied commander, less amused by the gallows humor as they hung in the depths of the shaft, told him to stop making such jokes until they were safely back above ground. It is a human moment amid the drama of the discovery, a glimpse of the personalities of the men who descended to view the extraordinary treasure. But amid the glittering gold and the priceless art, the mine held something far darker, something that revealed the true and terrible nature of the regime that had gathered the treasure. For among the hoard was loot of a different and dreadful kind, valuables that the regime's most notorious organization had taken from the victims of its crimes. This loot included personal valuables and possessions, gold and other items taken from those who had been persecuted and murdered in the regime's campaign of atrocity. Some of these items were of the most intimate and personal kind, and their presence in the hoard revealed the terrible truth of where much of this wealth had come from. The treasure was not merely wealth. Much of it was plunder, taken by force and by murder, the spoils of a monstrous crime. The discovery of this loot cast the entire treasure in a dark and terrible light, transforming a tale of hidden wealth into a revelation of the regime's monstrous nature. The gold and valuables were not merely riches. They were, in significant part, the fruits of robbery and murder, taken from the victims of the regime's atrocities and from the nations it had plundered. The Allied commander was deeply affected by what he saw, sobered by the evidence of the regime's crimes, the loot revealing the true nature of the enemy they were fighting. The discovery of this loot alongside the gold and art transformed the meaning of the treasure, revealing it as evidence of a great crime, the physical remnant of robbery, plunder, and murder on a vast scale. The presence of this loot in the mine made the treasure into something more than a mere discovery of wealth. It made it into evidence of the regime's crimes, the physical proof of the robbery and murder that had gathered so much of this treasure. The gold and valuables taken from the victims of the atrocities were a terrible testament to the nature of the regime, a revelation of the systematic plunder that had accompanied its campaign of persecution and murder. The Allies understood this, treating the discovery not merely as a windfall of wealth, but as evidence of the crimes that had produced it, a grim reminder of the true nature of the enemy and the atrocities they had committed. Given the enormous value of the treasure and the fact that the region was to pass into a different zone of control after the war, the Americans moved quickly to secure and remove the hoard. In an urgent operation, they transported the vast treasure out of the mine, moving the gold, currency, art, and loot to a secure location further to the rear. This was a major undertaking, the moving of hundreds of tons of gold and other valuables, carried out with urgency and under guard, even with air cover to protect against any attempt to interfere. The treasure was successfully removed from the mine and secured, taken to safety before the region passed out of American control. The vast hoard, hidden by the regime in the depths of the mine, was now in Allied hands. In the aftermath of the discovery, the treasure was dealt with according to its nature and origins. The currency and gold were secured, and in time, much was returned to the nations from which it had been taken, or otherwise dealt with as part of the broader effort to address the plunder of the war. The artworks, the priceless masterpieces found in the mine, were cataloged and over time returned to their rightful owners, the museums and collections from which they had been taken. Specialists worked to identify and restore the cultural treasures, part of a broader effort to recover and return the art plundered by the regime. The treasure uncovered in the depths of the mine was thus in large part restored, its rightful owners recovering what had been taken from them. What does the discovery of the treasure in the salt mine reveal about the regime and the war? First and foremost, it reveals the systematic plunder that accompanied the regime's campaign of conquest and atrocity, the vast robbery that was part of its monstrous character. The treasure was, in significant part, plunder taken from the nations the regime had conquered and from the victims of its crimes. This illustrates the systematic nature of the regime's robbery, the way that plunder and theft were integral to its character, accompanying its campaign of conquest and murder. The treasure in the mine was a physical manifestation of this plunder, evidence of the vast robbery that the regime had carried out. The discovery also reveals the dark truth behind the glittering wealth, the terrible origins of much of the treasure. The gold and valuables might have seemed simply a great fortune, but their true nature was far darker. Much of the treasure had been taken by force and by murder, the spoils of robbery and atrocity. This illustrates a profound truth about the regime, that its wealth, like so much else about it, was built on crime, on robbery and murder and plunder. The treasure in the mine was not innocent wealth, but the fruit of monstrous crimes, and its discovery revealed this dark truth, exposing the criminal foundations of the regime's riches. Consider, too, what the discovery reveals about the desperation of the regime in its final days, the frantic effort to hide its treasure as its world collapsed. The hiding of the treasure in the mine was an act of desperation, an attempt to conceal and preserve the regime's wealth as defeat closed in. This illustrates the collapse of the regime, the desperation of its final days, the frantic effort to hide and protect its treasure even as everything crumbled around it. The treasure in the mine was a testament to this desperation, the hidden hoard of a collapsing regime concealed in the depths of the earth in a doomed effort to preserve it from the advancing Allies. There is a significant lesson here, too, about the importance of the Allied effort to recover and restore what the regime had plundered. The Allies did not simply seize the treasure as a windfall. They worked to identify its origins and to restore it to its rightful owners, returning plundered wealth and art to the nations and institutions from which it had been taken. This illustrates the Allied commitment to justice, to righting the wrongs of the regime's plunder, to restoring what had been stolen. The effort to recover and restore the treasure was part of the broader effort to address the crimes of the regime, an important dimension of the pursuit of justice in the aftermath of the war. It is worth reflecting as well on the way that the treasure in the mine served as a revelation of the regime's true nature, a physical embodiment of its crimes. The gold and valuables taken from the victims of the atrocities were a terrible testament to the regime's monstrous character, evidence of the robbery and murder that had accompanied its campaign of persecution. The treasure was not merely wealth, but evidence, a physical manifestation of the regime's crimes. This reminds us of the importance of confronting and remembering the true nature of the regime, of understanding that its glittering wealth was built on robbery and murder, and of honoring the victims from whom so much had been taken. The discovery of the treasure in the Nazi salt mine stands as one of the most remarkable finds of the entire war, a revelation of hidden wealth and dark crimes. It reveals the systematic plunder that accompanied the regime's campaign of conquest and atrocity, the terrible origins of much of the treasure, the desperation of the regime in its final days, and the importance of the Allied effort to recover and restore what had been stolen. And it stands as an enduring reminder of the true nature of the regime, whose glittering treasure, hidden in the depths of a salt mine, was in significant part the fruit of robbery and murder, a physical embodiment of its monstrous crimes. So remember what General Patton's army found hidden in a Nazi salt mine. Remember the staggering treasure concealed in the depths, the hundreds of tons of gold, the priceless art, the currency and valuables heaped in the underground vault. Remember how the discovery came about, the chance information that led the Americans to the hidden hoard, and the astonishing sight that met them when they broke into the vault. Remember the top generals descending into the mine to behold the treasure with their own eyes. But remember, above all, the dark truth that the treasure revealed, the loot taken from the victims of the regime's crimes, the evidence of robbery and murder amid the glittering gold. And remember the deeper truths the discovery reveals about the systematic plunder of the regime, about the criminal foundations of its wealth, and about the importance of recovering and restoring what had been stolen, and of remembering the victims from whom so much had been taken.